Why? Hello and welcome everybody. So today, instead of like another build overview, I wanted to go ahead and give my first impressions since a lot of people are asking this question on stream, so I wanted to kind of make a video to address it. Now, in this video, I'm trying to basically cover things like the pacing of the game, does it feel slow, current loot situation, bosses, difficulty, monster damage, crafting, and maybe a few others. So let's jump into this. First off, let's start with the pacing of the game. Now, if you look at my current character here, this is after playing for a few days. I actually really like the pacing, and I'd say this is on the more extreme side, right? If you want to make your character quick in maps, you can absolutely make it quick. The only thing limiting my character now is quite literally just speed. I could realistically take more movement speed on the passive tree, alongside with actually getting movement speed boots and things like that. I think is the option of mobility skills, but they're not going to be anywhere near the comparison of POE1. In terms of pacing in the early stages of the game, I actually really like it. Pacing in the early game, you don't feel overwhelmed like POE. One of the really nice things they added is the recommended feature. So when you get a skill gem, and you look and you click at to see the supports, it'll show recommended supports. Now, it doesn't always have the best support gems, but it can get you by with just the recommended, and I think that that's really good. So the overall pacing of the game, I think, feels pretty nice. I would say one thing that I am not a super big fan of, this kind of has to do with the pacing because it's at the same time. This would be the fact that maps, and this has to do with maps and campaign zones, are they're just so massive, right? Normally, this is not a problem for me because, you're just spending more time killing mobs and less time switching zones. But in this instance, the problem is if you miss a side boss because you don't know where it is, or you miss an objective because you don't know where it is, you have to spend, 10 minutes, 5 minutes walking to try to figure out where to go. So this is something I would like to see alleviated a little bit. Thankfully, in maps, there's already a patch where they said if there's less than 200 mobs remaining, which is quite a bit, I think, it will now start to highlight rare mobs. So they're like already kind of going in the right direction. It's only been, a few days, so I'm already happy about that. Next up, I want to talk about, does it feel slow? This one's kind of like a trigger for me, and the only reason why it's a trigger for me is because, when we've been looking at the POE2 footage for the past few years on and off, there's always been the people saying basically like, I can't stand looking at this gameplay, it looks archaic, this stuff is made for grandpas, etc. Now that I'm actually playing it, I don't think the game feels slow at all. I think maybe the raw movement speed of like how fast you walk in relation to how big the zones are can feel slow, but the actual combat to me does not feel slow. Bosses have telegraphs, but it's not just like dodge circle. It's like look at boss, look at animation, or react to stuff. So I really like that. Mobs do not feel slow. They don't have any chill. Your own player skills don't have any chill if you set them up correctly. So overall, to me, the pacing of the game does not feel slow. Considering the stage of the game in like early access right now, I think it's at a wonderful pace. Now we have loot situation. So loot situation is basically referring to the fact that if you're watching this video, you'll notice not a lot of loot drops. Now, in the campaign especially, basically no loot drops. You get some currency here and there. I think there's like, we'll call them scripted. So like you like guaranteed are to get certain currency at certain stages of the game. But I think the problem that can occur is in Act 1, a lot of people are giving up on the game because they get to the final boss, they try to kill him, they die. I died myself, he was my first death. I died 3 times to him, I think. Then I went back to try to go farm some loot, and I noticed like I killed like 10 rares and I didn't find anything, right? But the thing is I think what is intended to be done, right, is essentially you are supposed to pick up bases that are good for you, transmute them, throw an augment. This is what I've been doing later into the game. It helps a lot. Check your vendors, look for movement speed boots. For me personally, when I picked up movement speed boots, the boss became much more manageable and I actually ended up clearing it. With that being said, I would like to see more rare items, specifically in Act 1, where players are struggling to just get even blues in every slot. I think that this would help quite a bit. So something like that. I think the loot does get better as you go through the game. It just feels inconsistent because, for example, when I first started mapping, the loot didn't feel that good. But now that I'm into like tier 8 maps, in this video, we're not in tier 8 maps. This is like from the beginning of yesterday, sort of. It's like halfway through? It's like halfway through. Towards the ending, I started running tier 8 maps. My Atlas is, I don't want to say juiced, but I've got like, 10 points in it. I've got bonus magic pack size. I've got bonus rare mobs. I have like overlapping towers that are scaling it. And this sounds like a lot. This is not a lot of stuff. In PoE content, I'm still doing like white maps or maybe like early yellow maps now. So nothing really crazy at all. And I also tried some party play. With party play, I noticed we were getting way more loot. I don't know if it's because my buddy DM has like 75 rarity, but we were definitely getting loot. Like I would say every other rare mob we killed, we would get an exalted or not maybe a regal, but maybe like, I don't want to say shards because people are going to meme. So I would say an exalted or a chaos or I don't really know. I guess that even like a GCP or an alchemy sometimes, every couple of mobs we'd kill, that would happen. And on a boss, usually every actual boss fight, we were getting loot in 2-player. Not to mention the like 2 to 3 rares per rare per boss we killed. Next up would be I guess the bosses in general. So in terms of bossing, I really like bosses in PoE2. It's exactly actually how I thought it was going to be. Right when you start, the bosses are pretty crazy. They're like pretty intense, right? And here's an example of the backtracking. There's 50 mobs remaining. I need to kill rares. So now I'm running through and trying to find where the rares are in these like corridors, right? Because I want to get the map completion if you look on the top right here. Anyway, though, going back to bosses, they're really tough your first time going through because you probably don't have like a proper build or gear. But once you actually start to get geared, you actually will start to trivialize a lot of these boss encounters. So prime example for me is when I am bossing, even on my character right now, it's definitely like a little bit on the weaker side. But even on the weaker side of my character, I basically freeze the boss. When the boss is frozen, I can do a combo chain to do about 40 to 50% of their life. And then I just stall until I can pop another freeze. That is way less difficult than what I had to do at the beginning of the game, where I'm like actively dodging every boss mechanic and etc. Right? So definitely changes a lot as you get higher level. And I haven't seen any of the special bosses, right? Just the standard campaign bosses and map bosses, which are a reflection of that. Next up would be monster damage. So right now, mobs are insane, but I think it's a mixture of players not having good defenses, since I feel everyone is kind of in the same boat, where it's really easy to get damage, and it is not as easy to get defenses. I feel like a PoE1 build right now, where I have big HP pool, big ES pool, big sustain on kill, but I have no defensive layers. Like, my defensive layers are just, I have ES and life, and that's it. I'm not really a big fan of that. But again, this has to do with the fact that I'm not doing a lot of the league mechanic content that offers much better gear than just picking stuff up off the floor. And the reason why is because once I get some better gear, then I can start maybe dipping into evasion energy shield or armor energy shield, actually cap my resistances, right? So there is more room to get stuff. It's just we're still in such an early stage of the game. So that's kind of why I feel like that. And the last one to talk about right now would be crafting. So crafting in the current state is a little weird. So basically, I feel that this would be much better with a proper loot filter. I know people are going to meme and say loot doesn't even drop. Why do you need a filter? The reasoning for the filter is because for me to properly craft upgrades, right, I want to turn on every base type that is good for my build, highlight it, stash a whole bunch of them in my stash as I pick them up. So kind of like, sadly, kind of like the Necropolis meta, if you kind of know what I mean. And then pick them all up and start transmuting, augmenting each one. If any of them are bad, they go into the 3-for-1 table. I think there's like a salvage table or something over here. And then that way you can keep recycling it. Alks are kind of too rare to find. But that's the thing is if alks get increased, then you can go from, your standard transmute augment to I now alk my other upgrades, right? And that's already pretty good, because after you alk it, then you can kind of mess around with some other currency, such as exalting, not regaling. So you'd have exalting. You could potentially have essences. I haven't actually gotten to use an essence yet, but I think the high tier essences can be used on, is it existing gear? I really don't remember, so I apologize if I'm wrong here. Definitely some more room to explore. I have only dipped my toes in the crafting here because we don't have too much. But you don't really have access to much at all in the early stages. Anyway, I think that's pretty much about it. Overall, I would summarize that I am extremely happy with the game. My only downsides, I would say, if I kind of do a recap, is I would like to see more loot at the lower levels, right? Some of the maps are far too large for the objective requirements, so I don't know if they should just shrink those or maybe make the objectives just way more obvious so you can't miss them. I mean, it doesn't need to be brain dead where it's the whole point of like arrow aim at this location, you just go there, but some of them are just a bit too extreme, right? Other than that, I mean, there's a few other negative things, but I'm trying to make the video more positive since there's a kind of a wave of negativity going around right now. So my brain is just kind of staying focused and positive, right? I think they have the best foundation of an early access game that one could ask for. And now they just have to tweak some numbers to get it in a better state, and then they can work on like adding more content, something similar to that, right? Class balance definitely is not fully there. For example, I think Blood Mage is out of 10, but you know, that's beside the point, right? That's my opinion. Anyway, though, I'm going to catch you guys all later. I'm kind of done ranting here. I'm going to go ahead and go live on Twitch, and we're going to go blast some more maps in PoE2. So hope you guys had a wonderful time. Hope you guys enjoyed yourselves, and if you did, don't forget, you can always like, share, and subscribe, and catch me streaming live every day at twitch.tv/Pohx. See you guys all tomorrow.